Today on Upfront, what does a wave look like? Next on Upfront, does the U.S. Senate race in Alabama tell us anything about the 2018 election cycle in Wisconsin? I'll ask Marquette Law School poll director Charles Franklin. Plus, Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore of Milwaukee on why she's supporting efforts to impeach President Trump. Is House Speaker Paul Ryan of Janesville really considering retirement? And the lawsuit the state says could imperil the Foxconn project.
Covering the issues important to Wisconsin. This is Upfront with Mike Goucher.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Upfront. We begin today with this question. Is a wave building in 2018? Enthusiastic Democrats say recent election victories in Virginia, New Jersey, and Alabama may be just the beginning of a Democratic wave, one that in some ways resembles the Republican wave of 2010. Last week's results from Alabama, where Democrats captured a U.S. Senate seat for the first time in 25 years, were the talk of the nation. Later on Upfront, I'll be talking about what happened with Marquette Law School poll director Charles Franklin, a native son of Alabama. But first, Milwaukee Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore, who was recently one of 58 House Democrats who voted to begin impeachment proceedings against President Trump. Congresswoman Moore, it's good to have you back on the program.
And thank you, Mike. Always good to be here.
So let's talk about Alabama. What's your take on what happened there? And is it applicable to the 2018 election cycle in places like Wisconsin?
I think it absolutely is. I think it really bodes well for Democrats because we're looking at a new coalition of voters. First of all, the largest cohort of voters at this particular time are the millennials. And millennials value things like preserving our environment, being anti-discrimination against the LGBT community, against racial segregation and racial discrimination. And I think in this particular administration, we have seen the head of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, be the absolute centerpiece for all of these negative policies that millennials are rejecting.
So you've heard Republicans say, especially in Wisconsin, that what happened to Roy Moore, that really doesn't bode terribly poorly for them because they think Roy Moore was a flawed candidate in many ways, that he's not representative of what Republicans will run on in 2018.
Well, of course he was a very flawed candidate. President Trump is a flawed candidate. But what we're seeing is that the Republican Party is full of flawed candidates. I mean, Mike, think about it. They're about to pass a tax cut which shifts wealth from middle-class families, from poor, low-income, disabled, elderly, and children, shift the responsibility for funding our government away from the corporate responsibility to these people, repealing the AMT for corporations, the estate tax, and providing temporary cuts for middle-class families, or some middle-class families, and voters are seeing that as well. And so the entire party is flawed.
So that'll be part, no doubt, of what Democrats will talk about in 2018. Do you think Democrats can regain control of the House, and should they regain control of the House, would you favor them moving as quickly as they can with impeachment proceedings of the president?
Well, I can tell you that will depend, and I'm willing to wait on what Special Prosecutor Mueller has done. Mike, I just couldn't resist the opportunity to reject Donald Trump, since I have felt for a long time that he is incompetent, that he has serious mental illness issues, that he does not study, and he's dangerous, that we could trip into a war in North Korea, that he won't recognize that Russia has interfered with our election, that he has sexually assaulted folk and continues to support that perspective, and he has violated the Emoluments Clause. I don't particularly need convincing, but I understand how important it is to have the country come along with you in order to do that.
Do you think Bob Mueller is in any danger of being fired?
I absolutely think he is in terrible trouble right now. We see our colleagues on Capitol Hill shamefully throwing shade on a very distinguished man in an investigation.
Is it on him or is it on the people who are helping him with the investigation, where they're questioning whether or not people gave money to Democratic candidates, whether or not people were biased in their investigation?
People are allowed to express themselves through providing political contributions. People are allowed to text and say that Donald Trump is a moron, although I've not been that unkind myself. People are allowed to do this. And it doesn't mean that they're incapable of doing objective work. And so I think these people on Capitol Hill are doing the bidding of Donald Trump and trying to discredit this investigation so as to shut it down.
I want to ask you about someone you've worked with for a number of years. That's Congressman Paul Ryan, Speaker Ryan. Some reports out last week, and we should say that the Speaker's office is saying, no, this is not correct. I'm not retiring. But the reports are that he's at least considering retiring. What's your reaction to that? Because I did see a tweet that you sent out on your campaign Twitter account, and I'll read it briefly. It says, Paul Ryan is working to shower the wealthy with tax cuts, gut Social Security and Medicare,
Absolutely.
and repeal Obamacare. Now he is considering not running for re-election after 2018. If Paul Ryan wants to leave Congress, he should do it now, capital letters, before he destroys the social safety net. Your reaction to the Speaker's possible consideration of retirement?
Well, you know, I wouldn't doubt it at all. I know Paul Ryan, and I do believe
like
sincerely.
him, don't
What's the love got to do with it, as Tina Turner would say? Yes, I admire him. He's a nice, gentle, polite young man. I think he is. That's what's kept him elected all this time. But he, in fact, is leading the Republican Party off the cliff. That those Republicans are going to stand for re-election, and they're going to lose. Many of them are going to lose their seats and give Democrats the majority. But I'll tell you, my anger arises because these are not Donald Trump's ideas. These are Paul Ryan's ideas to provide corporate tax cuts for the wealthiest corporations and people in this country. And he has said in his own words, if he were to come back, that he would then start tearing up Medicare, Social Security, food stamps, and all of the social safety net programs that Americans have come to rely on. How dare him? Go now before you destroy the country.
Congresswoman Gwen Moore from the city of Milwaukee, it's good to have you on our program today. Thanks very much for being with us.
Always good to be with you, Mike.
And my conversation with Representative Moore continues now on our website, where we're talking about why she feels that gerrymandering, redistricting affects people of color disproportionately. You'll find that on the Upfront section of WISN.com. Coming up next on Upfront, what we learned from the Alabama Senate race. Marquette Law School poll director Charles Franklin on how the political winds are blowing in Wisconsin. And later, the legal question the state says could jeopardize Mount Pleasant's deal with Foxconn.
Up Front with Mike Goucher, brought to you by the American Transmission Company and the Wisconsin Corn Growers Association.